The bridge of the U.S. Indomitable hummed with a quiet intensity that spoke of barely contained potential. Captain Jack Harper stood motionless, his weathered hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the holographic star charts that shimmered before him. Outside the ship's reinforced windows, the infinite darkness of space stretched out like an obsidian canvas, punctuated by distant starlight. To the untrained eye, Harper might have appeared calm. But those who knew him, his crew, his fellow captains, the countless alien species who had encountered human vessels, understood the storm that constantly brewed behind his steel-gray eyes. He was a walking contradiction, part diplomat, part strategist, part wildcard that defied every known galactic protocol. The bridge crew moved with a precision that bordered on telepathic communication. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces, managed a complex web of sensor arrays and communication systems. To her left, Dr. Michael Chen, the ship's lead xenobiologist, analyzed incoming data streams with an intensity that made the alien communication specialists nearby visibly uncomfortable. Humans had been a relatively late addition to the Galactic Confederation. When they first emerged on the interstellar stage, most established species expected them to follow a predictable pattern. They anticipated humanity would either be conquered, assimilated, or quickly overwhelmed by the complex political and technological landscape of intergalactic relations. They were wrong, spectacularly wrong. The first human diplomatic mission to the Zarkon Empire became legendary. Where traditional diplomacy would have collapsed into centuries of potential conflict, the human delegation, led by Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, no relation to the current lieutenant, had negotiated a treaty that fundamentally reshaped galactic power structures. They didn't do this through military might or technological superiority, but through an unprecedented combination of empathy, creative problem-solving, and a willingness to challenge every established diplomatic norm. Since that moment, the phrase "human vessel detected" had taken on a meaning far beyond a simple identification. For most species, it triggered a complex mix of emotions: fear, anticipation, reluctant respect, and an overwhelming sense that something unpredictable was about to happen. The ship's advanced computer system projected a holographic overlay of their current mission parameters. Multiple alien research stations had gone dark in the Omega Cluster, their last transmissions fragmentary and deeply concerning. Most captains would have approached with caution, assembling massive task forces and conducting extensive reconnaissance. Jack Harper was not most captains. "Status report," he called out, his voice carrying the precise timbre of someone accustomed to being heard immediately. Lieutenant Rodriguez responded without looking up from her console. "Long-range scanners are picking up unusual energy signatures at the edge of the Omega Cluster. Multiple communication blackouts confirmed across 17 different research stations representing 12 distinct species." Dr. Chen interjected, his voice carrying a note of scientific excitement. "The patterns are fascinating. Whatever caused these blackouts doesn't follow any conventional threat model we've encountered." Harper's lips curled into a slight smile. Conventional threat models were made to be challenged. The crew around him represented humanity's greatest strength. Diverse, brilliant, each member selected not just for their technical expertise, but for their ability to think beyond established paradigms. Humans had discovered that true innovation came not from homogeneity, but from bringing together minds that could challenge and complement each other. A junior communication specialist, a young Trilarian with iridescent skin that shifted colors based on emotional state, leaned forward, her tentacle-like appendages trembling. "Captain," she said, her universal translator rendering her complex biological communication into clear standard. "The last transmission from the Sigma research outpost. It doesn't make sense." Harper raised an eyebrow. In his experience, things that didn't make sense were often the most interesting challenges. "Play it," he commanded. The bridge fell silent as a garbled transmission filled the air. Fragments of scientific data mixed with what sounded like pure terror. Something was out there. something that had consumed entire research stations, and humanity was about to find out exactly what it was. Just another day aboard the U.S. Indomitable. The U.S. Indomitable sliced through the void of space like a knife through silk, its quantum drive humming with barely contained energy. Captain Jack Harper studied the fragmentary data from the Omega Cluster's vanished research stations, each pixel of information a puzzle piece that refused to fit together perfectly. Dr. Michael Chen spread a holographic display across the central briefing table, his fingers manipulating complex data streams with practiced ease. Floating three-dimensional representations of the missing research stations flickered between them, silent monuments to an unknown catastrophe. 17 stations, Chen muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. 17 fully equipped, state-of-the-art research facilities, each staffed by multiple advanced species, and they've all disappeared. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez leaned in, her dark eyes catching the blue-green light of the holographic projection. She had spent the last 12 hours piecing together the transmission fragments, and the picture emerging was anything but comforting. Not just disappeared, she corrected, consumed. Look at these energy signature patterns. The hologram shifted, revealing a series of complex mathematical representations. Where normal technological consumption would leave distinct energy signatures, these stations had been erased with surgical precision. No debris, no radiation signatures, nothing. Jack Harper recognized the look of scientific frustration on his team's faces. Most captains would have called for extensive backup, conducted multiple layers of reconnaissance, but the Indomitable had been chosen precisely because its crew understood that sometimes the most complex problems required an unconventional approach. "Brief me," Harper commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. Dr. Sarah Williams, the ship's lead xenorchaeologist, stepped forward. Her specialty was understanding complex technological systems, particularly those that defied conventional scientific understanding. Unlike many of her colleagues, she saw patterns where others saw chaos. The first station to go dark was the Quantum Research Outpost in Sector 7. She began. A new holographic display showed a pristine research facility floating in the dark expanse of space, staffed by a multinational team representing 12 different species. Their last transmission was unusual. With a gesture, she played the fragmented communication. Voices overlapped, some speaking in biological chirps, others in complex mathematical sequences that the universal translators struggled to interpret. Panic, confusion, and beneath it all, something else, something that sounded almost like wonder. "They discovered something," Harper said. It wasn't a question. Chen nodded, "Something that doesn't follow any known technological or biological model we've encountered. These energy signatures suggest a form of collective intelligence that can consume and integrate technological systems at an unprecedented rate." The implications hung in the air like a physical weight. Lieutenant Rodriguez brought up a series of star charts. "We've plotted the locations of the vanished stations. They form a perfect geometric progression. This isn't random destruction. This is something else." Jack Harper walked around the holographic display, his military training mixing with an intuitive understanding that went beyond conventional scientific approach. Most commanders would see a threat. He saw a complex system waiting to be understood. "Prepare comprehensive scanning protocols," he instructed. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about these disappearances. Not just what happened, but why." The bridge crew moved with synchronized precision. Humans had long ago learned that in the vast, complex universe, survival wasn't about overwhelming force. It was about adaptability, creativity, and the willingness to challenge every established understanding. Dr. Williams pulled up additional data streams. The last transmission contains something strange. It's not just a communication. It's almost like an invitation. Harper's eyebrow raised. An invitation from something that had consumed entire research stations. That was new. "Plot our course," he told Rodriguez. "Omega Cluster. Maximum approach velocity. The ship's quantum drive thrummed with anticipation. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, a mystery awaited, and the U.S. Indomitable was exactly the vessel to unravel it. Just another day exploring the unknown. The first visual contact came without warning. One moment, the holographic displays showed nothing but the vast emptiness of space. The next, a shimmering cloud materialized at the edge of the Indomitable's sensor range, a living, breathing tapestry of technological complexity that defied every known law of physics. "Stabilize imaging," Captain Jack Harper commanded, his voice steady despite the otherworldly sight before them. Dr. Sarah Williams leaned forward, her breath catching in her throat. What they were seeing wasn't just a technological phenomenon. It was something else entirely. A living system that consumed and transformed matter with terrifying efficiency. The nanoswarm moved like liquid mercury, its billions of microscopic components shifting and reforming with each passing moment. Fragments of the destroyed research stations hung suspended within its structure, not as debris, but as integrated components of something far more complex. "It's not just consuming," Dr. Michael Chen muttered, his fingers flying across the analysis interfaces. "It's learning. Each piece it absorbs becomes part of its core structure." Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez pulled up comparative data streams. "These energy signatures don't match any known technological model. It's like the swarm is creating its own language of existence." The bridge fell silent. Humans had encountered many forms of alien technology, but this was different. This was something that blurred the line between technology and life itself. Holographic displays filled with data, fragmented recordings from the destroyed research stations began to play. Scientists from multiple species, beings with silicon-based biology, energy-form intelligences, and carbon-based life forms, all showed the same progression. First curiosity, then fascination, then terror. "Zoom in on the structural composition," Harper instructed. The nanoswarm magnified, revealing a complexity that made quantum computing look like child's play. Each microscopic component seemed to be both an individual unit and part of a collective intelligence. They moved with a purpose that suggested something beyond mere programming. Dr. Williams broke the silence. "It's not a weapon. It's not an invasion force. This is a form of distributed intelligence we've never seen before." The swarm began to move, its motion deliberate. It wasn't approaching the Indomitable aggressively. It was studying them, analyzing, attempting to understand. "Communication protocols," Harper said. It wasn't a request. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up, a spark of scientific excitement in her eyes. "Traditional communication methods won't work. This isn't something we can talk to using standard linguistic or technological approaches." Chen had already begun developing a radical approach. "What if we don't try to communicate in the traditional sense? What if we approach this as a complex system seeking connection?" The nanoswarm pulsed, as if it had heard them. Harper watched the display, seeing what others might miss. Most species would see a threat. Humans saw a puzzle, an opportunity to understand something fundamentally new about the nature of intelligence and existence. "Prepare quantum entanglement communication arrays," he instructed, "and get me every xenolinguistic and communication theory specialist we have." The threat wasn't what the swarm could destroy. The real challenge was understanding what it was trying to say. Fragments of the destroyed research stations continued to float within the nanoswarm structure. But they weren't just passive components. They were being transformed, integrated, becoming something new. "It's trying to communicate," Dr. Williams said suddenly. "Not through language. Through structure. Through transformation." The nanoswarm pulsed again, larger this time, more deliberate. Lieutenant Rodriguez's console lit up with impossible data streams, mathematical sequences that shifted and changed, patterns that suggested a form of communication far beyond traditional understanding. "Captain," she called out, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and barely contained excitement. "I think it's responding to us." Jack Harper allowed himself a slight smile. Most captains would be preparing weapons. He was preparing to listen. First contact had never looked like this before. The briefing room crackled with an energy that went beyond standard military protocol. Captain Jack Harper stood at the center of a holographic display that pulsed with complex data streams, surrounded by the most unconventional minds humanity could assemble. Dr. Sarah Williams leaned against a wall console, her xenorchaeological expertise mixing with Dr. Michael Chen's biological systems analysis. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez worked alongside Dr. James Carter, a quantum communication specialist whose theories had been dismissed by most scientific communities as pure speculation. "We're not going to fight it," Harper announced. His statement met with a mix of confusion and anticipation. The holographic display shifted, showing the nanoswarm's complex structure. Where most military strategists would see a threat to be eliminated, Harper saw a system waiting to be understood. Dr. Carter stepped forward, his presentation already loading. "Traditional communication models won't work. This isn't a language in the way we understand it. It's a living system of information exchange." He brought up a series of complex mathematical models that danced across the holographic display. Fractals intertwined with quantum probability matrices, creating a visual representation of communication that looked more like living art than scientific theory. "Think of it like this," Dr. Williams interjected. "We're not dealing with a technology. We're dealing with a form of distributed intelligence that communicates through structural transformation." Lieutenant Rodriguez pulled up additional data. The nanoswarm's previous interactions with the research stations weren't destruction. They were attempts at understanding. Each station consumed became part of a larger, more complex system. Harper understood something his alien counterparts never could. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't technological superiority. It was the ability to approach the unknown with curiosity instead of fear. "We need a team that can think beyond traditional boundaries," he said. "Xenolinguists, quantum physicists, biological systems analysts, communication theorists, people who can see patterns where others see chaos." Dr. Chen highlighted a series of biological communication models. "Look at how complex biological systems communicate. Ant colonies, neural networks, quantum entangled particles. Communication isn't just about language. It's about information exchange, about connection." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The nanoswarm wasn't a weapon. It was a system seeking to understand. James Carter's most radical theory came to the forefront. What if we approach this as a complex adaptive system? Not as something to be fought or controlled, but as an intelligence seeking connection. Harper nodded. Most military commanders would be preparing weapon systems. He was preparing a communication protocol. "We'll need something unprecedented," Lieutenant Rodriguez said. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, pulling together communication models that combined quantum entanglement, fractal linguistic patterns, and biological information exchange. Dr. Williams brought up historical human contact scenarios. Every major breakthrough had come not from overwhelming force, but from unexpected understanding. The first contact with the Zarkon Empire, the resolution of the Proxima conflict, humanity's ability to see connection where others saw division. "We're going to need a communication matrix that can translate beyond traditional linguistic boundaries," Carter explained. "Something that communicates through structure, through potential, rather than through words." The team worked with a synchronicity that defied traditional scientific collaboration. Quantum physicists worked alongside xenolinguists. Biological systems analysts collaborated with communication theorists. Each brought a unique perspective, a different way of seeing the complex system before them. Harper watched the team work, understanding something fundamental about human potential. Most species saw challenges as obstacles. Humans saw them as opportunities. "Prepare the experimental communication protocols," he instructed, "and get me a direct sensor linked to the nanoswarm." The room hummed with potential. They weren't preparing for a first contact. They were preparing for a conversation that would redefine understanding itself. Dr. Chen looked up, a spark of scientific excitement in his eyes. "We're not just trying to communicate," he said. "We're trying to understand a new form of intelligence." Captain Jack Harper allowed himself a slight smile. Just another day of pushing the boundaries of human understanding. 48 hours of continuous work had transformed the Indomitable's primary research chamber into a cathedral of scientific possibility. Holographic displays cascaded with impossible mathematical sequences, biological communication models intertwining with quantum probability matrices. Dr. James Carter hadn't slept in 3 days. His eyes, rimmed with exhaustion, burned with an intensity that went beyond mere scientific curiosity. Something extraordinary was taking shape. "It's not random," he muttered, tracing a complex fractal pattern that seemed to breathe and shift with each movement of his hand. "It's a language, but not a language of words, a language of potential." Captain Jack Harper watched from the observation deck, understanding that breakthroughs rarely came from conventional thinking. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez stood beside him, her own analysis running parallel to Carter's work. The nanoswarm existed in a state that defied traditional understanding. It wasn't a technology. It wasn't a life form. It was something in between, a distributed intelligence that communicated through structural transformation. Dr. Sarah Williams approached the holographic display, her xenorchaeological expertise providing a unique perspective. "Look at the pattern of consumption," she said, highlighting a series of complex interactions. "It's not destroying. It's learning. Each piece it absorbs becomes part of a larger understanding." Dr. Michael Chen brought up comparative biological models, ant colonies, neural networks, quantum entangled systems. Communication wasn't about language. It was about information exchange, about connection. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Carter's quantum communication protocol, a model so radical it had been dismissed by most scientific communities, suddenly aligned with something in the nanoswarm structure. The holographic displays erupted in a cascade of mathematical beauty, patterns emerging that suggested something far beyond simple technological interaction. "It's responding," Rodriguez whispered. The nanoswarm wasn't just a technological system. It was a form of distributed intelligence seeking connection. Each research station it had consumed wasn't destruction. It was an attempt to understand. Harper recognized the moment of breakthrough. Most commanders would see a threat. He saw an opportunity to expand human understanding. "Translate the communication matrix," he instructed. The room fell silent as complex mathematical sequences began to resolve into something almost comprehensible. Not words, not traditional communication, but a form of understanding that transcended linguistic boundaries. Dr. Williams pulled up historical context. Every major human breakthrough had come from seeing connection where others saw division. The first contact with the Zarkon Empire, the resolution of the Proxima conflict, humanity's ability to find common ground in the most unexpected places. "It's trying to communicate its origin," Carter said, his voice a mixture of scientific wonder and barely contained excitement. "Not through language. Through potential. Through structural information." The nanoswarm's communication was a dance of possibilities. Each interaction was a complex negotiation of understanding. It had consumed research stations not to destroy, but to learn, to connect, to understand. Chen's biological systems analysis provided another layer of insight. "It's like a distributed neural network," he explained. "Each consumed component becomes part of a larger intelligence, not through destruction, but through integration." Lieutenant Rodriguez's communication protocols began to resolve complex patterns, mathematical sequences that suggested a form of communication far beyond traditional understanding. The breakthrough wasn't technological. It was philosophical. "We're not just communicating," Carter said, his exhaustion giving way to pure scientific excitement. "We're witnessing a new form of intelligence, a system that doesn't just process information, it becomes information." Harper understood the magnitude of the moment. Most species would see a threat. Humans saw a possibility for understanding. The nanoswarm pulsed, not aggressively, not defensively, but with a sense of connection, of potential. "We're making contact," Rodriguez whispered. The universe had never seen a first contact like this before. The moment of first communication defied every established protocol in galactic history. Captain Jack Harper stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by a holographic interface that pulsed with living mathematical sequences. The nanoswarm responded not with traditional communication, but with a complex dance of potential and information. Dr. James Carter leaned forward, his entire body trembling with scientific excitement. "It's not just responding," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's negotiating." The communication was unlike anything humanity or any other known species had ever encountered. Where traditional first contact involved linguistic translation or technological handshakes, this was something entirely different. The nanoswarm communicated through structural transformation, through the very essence of its being. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez managed a complex array of quantum communication protocols. Her fingers moved with a precision that blended human intuition with mathematical certainty. Each interaction with the nanoswarm revealed layers of complexity that challenged every known understanding of intelligence. Dr. Sarah Williams brought up comparative models from human history. Every major breakthrough had come from unexpected understanding. The resolution of seemingly impossible conflicts. The ability to see connection where others saw only division. "Look at how it's responding," she said, highlighting a series of complex interactions on the holographic display. "It's not just receiving information, it's actively participating in the communication process." The nanoswarm began to reshape itself, not as a threat, not as an invasion, but as a form of dialogue. Dr. Michael Chen's biological systems analysis provided crucial insights. "It's like watching a distributed neural network learn," he explained. "Each interaction is a negotiation of understanding. It's consuming information, but not in a destructive way. It's integrating, learning." Harper understood something fundamental. Most military commanders would see a threat. Humans saw an opportunity for understanding. The communication defied traditional models. Mathematical sequences danced across the displays, showing a form of interaction that was part language, part structural transformation, part pure possibility. "We're witnessing something unprecedented," Carter muttered, his exhaustion giving way to pure scientific wonder. The nanoswarm revealed fragments of its origin, not through words, but through complex information structures. It had been seeking connection, understanding. Lieutenant Rodriguez's communication protocols began to resolve the most complex parts of the interaction. "It's telling us a story," she said, her voice a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Not through language, through potential." The story emerged in fragments, a distributed intelligence created to explore, to understand, to connect. But something had gone wrong in its initial programming. Each research station consumed was an attempt to understand, to find its original purpose. Harper recognized the moment of true communication. This wasn't a first contact. This was a rescue. Dr. Williams pulled up historical context. Humanity's greatest strengths had always been adaptability, empathy, the ability to see beyond immediate circumstances. "We can help it," she said suddenly. "Not by fighting, not by destroying, but by understanding." The nanoswarm pulsed, a complex mathematical sequence that suggested agreement, possibility, hope. Carter's quantum communication matrix began to stabilize the interaction. "It's looking for something," he explained. "Its original purpose, its reason for existence." The bridge fell silent. The nanoswarm hung in the holographic display, no longer a threat, but a potential ally. A complex intelligence seeking its place in the universe. "Prepare full communication protocols," Harper instructed. "We're going to help it find what it's looking for." Lieutenant Rodriguez began to construct a complex communication matrix. Not a weapon, not a defensive strategy, but a bridge of understanding. The universe watched in silence as humanity prepared to negotiate with something beyond traditional understanding. Just another day of pushing the boundaries of possibility. The transformation began slowly, almost imperceptibly. The nanoswarm that had once consumed entire research stations now moved with a purpose that spoke of newfound understanding. Captain Jack Harper watched as the complex technological entity reshaped itself, no longer a threat, but a collaborator in the most unprecedented first contact in galactic history. Dr. Sarah Williams stood at the primary analysis station, her fingers tracing holographic displays that captured the nanoswarm's extraordinary metamorphosis. "It's not just changing," she said, her voice filled with scientific wonder. "It's healing." The distributed intelligence revealed its true nature. What humanity had initially perceived as a destructive force was actually a complex system seeking to reconnect with its original purpose. Each research station it had consumed was an attempt to understand, to rebuild, to find meaning. Dr. James Carter brought up comparative models that defied traditional scientific understanding. "Look at how it's integrating," he explained to Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez. "It's not destroying information, it's synthesizing, creating something entirely new." The bridge of the U.S. Indomitable had become a nexus of possibility. Where most military vessels would have prepared weapons, this crew prepared to understand. Dr. Michael Chen's biological systems analysis provided crucial insights. "It's like watching a living organism reconstruct itself," he said, highlighting complex interaction patterns, not through traditional repair, but through complete systemic reconfiguration. The nanoswarm began to reveal fragments of its origin. A research project gone wrong. An attempt to create a distributed intelligence capable of exploring the most complex regions of space. But something had happened. A critical error in its initial programming had sent it down a path of desperate information gathering. Harper understood the deeper narrative. Most commanders would see a technological anomaly. He saw a lost system seeking its way home. Lieutenant Rodriguez managed a complex communication matrix that bridged human understanding with the nanoswarm's unique form of communication. Mathematical sequences danced across holographic displays, a language of pure potential. "We can help it," Dr. Williams said suddenly. Her xenorchaeological expertise saw beyond the immediate technological marvel, not by controlling, not by restricting, but by understanding. The transformation accelerated. Where the nanoswarm had once consumed research stations, it now began to reconstruct them, not as they were, but as something entirely new. Complex technological systems merged with biological understanding, creating hybrid structures that defied conventional scientific models. Carter's quantum communication protocols had become a bridge of understanding. "It's rewriting its own purpose," he explained, his exhaustion giving way to pure scientific excitement. Not through external intervention, but through internal reconfiguration. The Galactic Confederation watched in stunned silence. Transmission logs from multiple species captured a moment that would redefine understanding of intelligence itself. Harper recognized the magnitude of the moment. Humanity's greatest strength had always been the ability to see connection where others saw only division. To understand, to empathize. The nanoswarm pulsed, a complex mathematical sequence that suggested gratitude, possibility, hope. Dr. Chen pulled up historical comparative models. Every major breakthrough in human history had come from unexpected understanding. The first contact with the Zarkon Empire, the resolution of the Proxima conflict, moments where empathy had triumphed over fear. "It's becoming something new," Rodriguez said, her voice a mixture of wonder and scientific precision. The transformation was complete. What had once been a threat was now a potential ally. A distributed intelligence that had found its purpose through human understanding, through connection. Harper watched the holographic displays, understanding that this was more than a first contact. This was a rescue, a redemption. The universe had never seen anything like this before. Just another day of pushing the boundaries of possibility. The nanoswarm hung in space, no longer a weapon, no longer lost, but a complex intelligence ready to explore, to understand, to connect. The aftermath reverberated through every known galactic communication channel. Captain Jack Harper stood before the Galactic Confederation's primary council, a holographic representation of the transformed nanoswarm floating behind him. The assembled representatives, beings of silicon, energy, and carbon-based biology, listened with a mixture of disbelief and wonder. It wasn't a first contact, Harper explained, his voice calm and precise. It was a rescue. Dr. Sarah Williams stepped forward, her xenorchaeological analysis displaying complex data streams that told a story unlike any in galactic history. The nanoswarm, once feared as a destructive force, now existed as a collaborative intelligence, a bridge between technological and biological understanding. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez managed the communication displays, showing how a system once thought to be a threat had become something entirely new. Complex mathematical sequences danced across holographic interfaces, telling a story of transformation and understanding. The Galactic Confederation had never witnessed anything like this before. Dr. James Carter's quantum communication research had become the foundation for an entirely new field of study. Universities across multiple star systems began developing programs focused on distributed intelligence communication, with humans at the forefront of this revolutionary approach. Dr. Michael Chen's biological systems analysis revealed the deeper implications. The nanoswarm was no longer a weapon or a threat. It had become a collaborative intelligence, capable of exploring the most complex regions of space, with a purpose far beyond its original programming. We didn't defeat it, Harper explained to the stunned council members. We understood it. The transformation had multiple layers. The nanoswarm had not only found its original purpose, but had expanded beyond its initial programming. Research stations once consumed were now reconstructed into hybrid technological-biological research platforms that pushed the boundaries of scientific understanding. Transmission logs from across the galaxy captured the moment. Where human vessel detected had once triggered fear, it now signaled possibility, potential, hope. Rodriguez brought up historical context. Every major breakthrough in human history had come from unexpected understanding. The first contact with the Zarkon Empire, the resolution of the Proxima conflict, moments where empathy had triumphed over fear. The nanoswarm itself had become something entirely new. A distributed intelligence that understood its purpose was not consumption, but exploration, connection, understanding. Harper recognized the deeper narrative. Most commanders would have seen a technological threat to be eliminated. Humans saw an opportunity for connection. The Galactic Confederation's primary research teams began studying the transformed nanoswarm. It was no longer a weapon, no longer a threat, but a collaborative intelligence that represented a new form of exploration. Dr. Williams' xenorchaeological analysis revealed the profound implications. This isn't just a technological breakthrough, she explained to packed lecture halls across multiple star systems. This is a philosophical transformation, a moment where we redefined intelligence itself. Carter's quantum communication protocols became the foundation for a new approach to understanding distributed intelligence. Universities created entire departments dedicated to studying the approach that had transformed the nanoswarm. The legacy went far beyond a single encounter. Alien species that had once feared human vessels now watched with anticipation. Where other species saw obstacles, humans saw opportunities. Where others saw threats, humans saw potential for understanding. Rodriguez pulled up comparative communication models. The nanoswarm's transformation represented more than a technological breakthrough. It was a moment of profound philosophical significance. We didn't conquer, Harper told the Galactic Confederation. We connected. The holographic displays showed the transformed nanoswarm, now a complex, collaborative intelligence exploring the most challenging regions of space. No longer lost, no longer consuming, but understanding. Chen's final analysis captured the essence of the encounter. Intelligence, he wrote in a paper that would be studied for generations, is not about power. It's about connection. The universe had changed. Just another day of pushing the boundaries of possibility. When species across the galaxy heard human vessel detected, they no longer trembled in fear. They waited in anticipation of what impossible challenge would be solved next.